So in this demo, I'll lay down some script basics that will help us move to building our information gathering script. I'll cover setting variables, adding parameters to an existing script, looking at some logic constructs, and finish with member enumeration. So let's dive in. So what I have here is a basic script called get-service-status.ps1. And what this does is it goes and displays the service status of a running machine that's been specified. So in this, I'm showcasing a number of the techniques that we've talked about. So the first one, and we're just going to move down the line here, is on line 4, you see I'm creating a parameter. And we start off a parameter by putting in a keyword param, and then inside a parentheses, we put in parameter in brackets. We see we have a parameter in parentheses mandatory equal to true. And what that's doing is it's saying that, okay, this parameter that I'm creating, I want to make sure that when this is run, you have to have this parameter included. So it's mandatory to have it. And then the next thing is we're saying that this is a string. So it's going to be expecting to get a string coming through as the value to put in for the parameter. And then finally, we're putting in that is the variable that the parameter data is going to be stored in. And in this case, that is $computer name. So that's going to allow us to input a computer name and use that $computer name variable throughout our script. So the next, as we go down to line 10, what we've just done is I've just created a basic variable called $service that's equal to the commandlet get-service. And then what we want to do is we want to add in here computer name, $computer name. I could have left the parameter out there, but one of the things that I teach that I think is really important when you do scripting is it's great in the console to shorten things and use aliases and do all those things to make your typing more efficient. When you're building out your code, I like to use all of the full parameter names and I like to spell everything out. That way, when somebody else looks at your code or you look at your code a couple, months or years down the road, it's easier to see what you were trying to put there instead of a bunch of aliases and shortened parameters and that sort of thing. So as we move down into a couple of constructs. So the first construct that I have is I have the for each. And what this is going to do is it's going to run through the $service. So for each object, and that's represented by $A, so for each object in service, $service, it is going to perform all of the tasks that are in the script block. So it'll run through each of those objects that are in the service and perform anything that's inside the script block. So as we move down to line 17, we see that what I've done is I've created two variables. The first is $service status equals, and you'll notice what I've done is it's a $A decimal status. That it's basically like member enumeration. And what that's doing is it's saying that, okay, in that object A, I want you to simply give me the status property. And then the next one, $service display name, it's going to do the same thing. So in that $A, that object, it's going to just pull the display name. So this will give me two variables, the status and then the display name. So then inside that for each, I'm doing a decision using if else. So what I want to do is I want two different things to happen. So I want output created that basically says the display name of the service is equal to the status. So if I'm doing an if, and then inside the parentheses, I'm basically doing my conditional, okay, if I meet this condition, if the condition is true, then I'm going to perform this action. So in this case, if the $service status is equal to running, then it's going to write the output here. Otherwise, or else, it's going to perform this. So I realize that both of those are the same, but traditionally we would have two different things occurring here and happening. So that's some of the different techniques. So let's actually see those techniques in action when we run through them. So I'm going to go over here to my PowerShell console, and then we're going to do the get service status. It'll ask us for the computer name, and I'll put in client02. And notice it comes back with all of that information. So that's a little bit of how you can create a script and use some of the things like parameters and variables and also logic constructs. So the last thing I wanted to show you real quick is I'm going to go over to this other tab is I've created two variables here to kind of highlight some of the things that we've talked about with member enumeration. So we see on the first line, this is similar to what we've done before. We've done a get-sim instance of the Win32 operating system, and then we're piping that over to a select to pull out just the caption. So I'm going to add back in here my console screen. We're going to go ahead and run that. Notice nothing came up because basically we just put that into that variable. So I go down into the console screen, I put in my variable, and we see that it comes back with a caption, and so it comes back with a title and then the name underneath. So let's try this with member enumeration. So if I place this in here, it goes into that variable $OSV2. Notice now it just comes back with a value. So this is really helpful for when you're doing things where you're gathering information. So one other thing I wanted to show you here is I'm just going to go back up to this line. I'm going to delete out of this. I'm going to put an end parentheses, and I'm going to put a dot, and look at that. It gives me all of the different options that I can do with that command that's inside there. So I could pull build type, build number. All of the properties that are associated with that are available to me now. So this is a much easier way to be able to view all of these different things as you're going through and trying to find the things that you want to work with. Country code, if you needed that for any reason, you could do that. So you could choose any of those as you go through here. So that's a little bit about some of the techniques. So next we're going to get into building our remote information gathering script.